welcome to your reading. So this is going to be your forecast for the full moon in Aries, which happens on the 1st of October. So as you can see, I'm changing things up a little bit. Typical Aries sign, I love to experiment. So what I'm going to do for this forecast, which obviously is designed to last for the 2 weeks of the waning moon, I'm going to talk a little bit about the astrology using the Arcana of astrology cards, and then I'm going to do a geomantic reading, focusing mainly on the placements of the sun, the moon, and other planets that are keying into this particular full moon. So let's get started and see what wants to come through. So the first thing to say is that this full moon will happen across your 5th and your 11th houses. So the full moon, the moon in Aries, will be in your 5th house of children and kind of romance and creativity and leisure activities, and then the sun Libra will be here in your 11th house of partners, of friendships, but also of group situations, professional like networking basically, in social media. So an interesting pairing, and it's one that involves a lot of I suppose you could say the social dimension of things. So, I hope you're feeling gregarious, because I certainly think that Libra season is going to be a lot more gregarious than Virgo season was. That's one thing to say. And then let's talk a little bit about planets and aspects that are going on at this particular full moon. So one of the first things to say is that the moon will be making a conjunction to Chiron, and in astrology terms, Chiron is a centaur, so it's not a planet, it's a kind of smaller kind of object, but it's associated with healing. It's about the wounded healer, the centaur Chiron, who was the kind of senior of the centaurs. And centaurs are obviously important symbolism for a Sagittarius, because you're ruled by the centaur, who's kind of the archer, who's hunting, who's got his bow and arrow up and is aiming for the moon. So this is another of the centaurs. This is Chiron was the kind of head centaur. He was considered to be a little bit less low, sort of low vibrational than some of the centaurs. I don't like to use that word, but it just refers to the fact that the centaurs were considered to be very sexual beings. So they were very, very earthy. They liked doing kind of almost lyran things, if you want to talk in starseed terms. Wine, woman, and song, that kind of thing. Now, you're a little bit more elevated than that, Sagittarius, being ruled by Jupiter, which is very philosophical, and of course you're a fire sign, so we want to keep things high vibrational here. So let's just say that the moon will be combining with Chiron, and that this is an opportunity for healing, particularly when it comes to group dynamics. So, if you've had long-standing wounds, perhaps going back to school, for example, about not fitting in, then something might happen around about this time that gives you that opportunity to finally heal that wound, to turn pain into power and to alchemize the situation. Equally, if you've had a dispute, or, things have not been good between you and a pal, this is a perfect time to resolve that. And, if it has something to do with a lover, for example, because we do have the sun in the 5th house, so this can sometimes be, the sun can sometimes represent a male figure in the fifth house. So this can be either a male child, or it can be a male lover. So with the sun here opposite the moon, it is possible that whatever comes up at this time, as in terms of climax, or not, no pun intended, if something culminates at this time related to a new relationship, possibly somebody you met through a friend, a group of friends, or social media, that's another way that this energy can work. But we'll get into that with the geomancy and see what wants to come through. So the other thing that's important about this full moon is that Mars will be also in Aries, so here in your 5th house, and Mars will be making a conjunction to Black Moon Lilith. Now, Black Moon Lilith for me is not the asteroid, so there's two Liliths. For me, a Black Moon Lilith is the dark moon. So I should actually use the other, the moon phase thing. But so essentially, Mars is retrograde, and it's coming off of a square to Saturn, which is newly direct in Capricorn. And So I kind of feel as though maybe there's been some sort of delay when it comes to, you know, either a creative project, dating, or something to do with a child, or a holiday even. And it's led to a great deal of frustration. And Lilith for me is about the dark moon in the sense of emotions that we tend to repress or deny or project onto other people. So it's possible that you'll be made aware of something related to those particular life areas where you are feeling a bit of repressed anger or frustration. You know, I think probably frustration because of that square to Saturn, and Saturn for me very often brings about delays. So that's usually what causes the frustration, is there's some kind of obstacle or hindrance. Now, it could be a third party situation if this is to do with love. It could also be that maybe you met somebody online, for example, you know, given this 11th house emphasis, and maybe you haven't been able to actually meet them in the flesh because of social distancing and you know, lockdown, that kind of thing. So it could be that, you know, that at this full moon things kind of start to move forward, because now Saturn is direct, and so things can start to progress in the outside world. So that's just something to bear in mind. The other thing, of course, is it may have to do with an old situation, a past situation that involves a male child, because Mars is retrograde, and as I say, this house can be about children. So there may be something here too about maybe a child who's got anger issues, anger management issues, that's related to an event early in their past, which obviously, you know, your personal history is going to cross over with theirs. So that's another way that this energy might manifest. Just something to bear in mind. But the good news is that Jupiter, your planetary ruler, is now direct, also in Capricorn. So Capricorn for you is second house. So with Jupiter now direct in your second house of earned income and self-esteem, I do feel as though your confidence is coming back. You are feeling more optimistic about earned income. Maybe situations there have improved work-wise, or you know, if you run your own business, in terms of opportunities to earn some money. So that's a good thing. But let's get into a reading and see what other messages want to come through. And also, I should point out that I have done a separate video that goes into the astrology of this full moon in more depth. So if you're interested in things like fixed stars, or you like looking at the astrological chart, then you might want to watch that video. And I've done two. I've done a shortened version for YouTube, and then a more extended version for subscribers of my website. So that video is already up in the membership area, but I will link it in my newsletter and on the written forecast page. Right, let's cut the cards. So I'm experimenting a little bit with how I do the house placements. As you can see, I'm not doing the Golden Dawn system today. I'm also not going to be pulling over all the cards, because otherwise, you know, bringing in the astrology on top of the geomancy, I think it's just too much information. Okay. So let's just put Chiron with Mars there. And let's put them near to the correct house, so kind of here. All right, so let's have a look at the positions of the sun and the moon. This is so interesting. This has come up a number of times actually in the readings. I have a feeling that Virgo may have got these, and Scorpio. So you may have planets in those, or placements, natal placements in those signs. So across your 5th and your 11th house, we've got 2 earth geomantic figures. So this points to kind of practical matters, a need to sort of make tangible changes, or it has to do with actual physical events in the 3D steps that you need to take. So here where the moon is in the 11th house, I'm sorry, the sun. I'm getting all mixed up now. So the sun is here, the moon is here. So we've got a Missio, which is Venus in Taurus energy, and a Missio is really, I think, continuing the theme of harvest that we had in that, the forecast that I did for the full moon in the astrology. So the Native Americans call this full moon a harvest moon, and it's really about gathering the resources that we're going to need for, to kind of tide us over during difficult times. And I kind of feel as though we tend to think in terms of physical resources primarily, but there's also such a thing as kind of non-physical or emotional resources, in the sense of goodwill, for example, in a business, word of mouth, clients recommending you, giving you good reviews, that kind of thing. And then there's also goodwill that comes through your network, the people that will tell you about opportunities, that will recommend you to, friends will recommend your business to their friends, and also just hearing about opportunities through the grapevine, that kind of thing. Now, with a Missio, there's the sense of needing to let something go, or just realizing that not everything stays the same, which I think is quite apt, again, with that harvest moon metaphor. We've just kind of come out of the equinox, which is always about the changing of the seasons. And so there's this shift happening in nature where we are moving from, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, we're moving from summer to autumn and then into winter. So autumn is that transitional season. And in the Southern Hemisphere, of course, it's spring. So a Missio is about that sort of movement of from one season to another, from one phase of life to another, from one set of circumstances to another. And I mean, it's really interesting, actually, if you think about the theory of the elements, Empedocles' theory of the elements. He believed, and certainly the ancient Greeks who developed Western astrology in its kind of current form, they believed that the seasons were created by the morphing of one element into another. So if we think about the shift from summer, which is a fire season, into winter, which is, I suppose you could say, an earth season, or even, what would we say? Winter is, yeah, but you have to go through the sort of the water, the air and the water. So you go through the months of Libra, which is air, and then you go through Scorpio season, which is water, and then you sort of move on to the next element. So there's this sense of shifting gears. And likewise in the Southern Hemisphere, you kind of move from a very dry, cold type of, so almost like an air together with earth, you move from that type of energy into the moisture and the heat of spring. So spring is really about moisture, and then there's increasing heat as we move into the summer. So there's the sense of the elements shifting from one to another, and I think that's what's happening here in for you, because we've got Cardo Draconis here in your 5th house of romance, passion, joy, and sex. And Cardo Draconis for me is the tail of the dragon. It's the south node. So this is about something coming to an end. It's a release. So I feel as though there's a cycle coming to a close here, and it may have something to do with this healing that Chiron represents. Equally, it could be about, as I say, a situation that has caused a lot of resentment or anger in the past with Mars and Lilith, and it's time to let that energy go. So I really feel as though there's some kind of release happening for you here. Now, it could be a person too. It could be, for example, that you have parted ways with somebody that you were romantically entangled with for whatever reason, and maybe it made you very angry. Maybe there was a third party situation, or things just didn't kind of pan out, and there's a need to sort of release that disappointment and anger so that you can allow something else to come in. Let's have a look at the 7th house. Yes. So we've got movement and momentum in your 7th house. So I do feel like things are shifting for you when it comes to partnerships, particularly long-term relationships. So I feel as though you're moving out of one set of circumstances and into another one. Now, in some of my past readings, I do feel that some of you Sagittarius are kind of going through a breakup or divorce. So I see you moving on now. Via here is all about forward movement, momentum. It's literally the road. And interesting that we've got water here as the elements. So this is about allowing things to flow, allowing situations to gracefully come to an end and to sort of shift into something else, just like the seasons. So that's really interesting, actually. Let's just have a look at Saturn here in your second house. How fascinating. So we've got an echo here of a Missio in your second house of self-worth and earned income. So I do feel as though this is some kind of transient situation that is ending for you, and it could be to do with money. It could be that there's a creative opportunity is no longer going to be earning you some money, for example, or maybe there isn't a demand for it, on social media or online or whatever the case may be. So there's this shifting and this letting go of something so that something else can come in. And equally, this could also be about a shift in terms of your self-esteem. So, if, for example, you've been feeling like a bad mother because maybe, Mars here is sort of talking about a male child that has had quite a few psychological issues or emotional issues or something of that ilk. Maybe you feel like you failed, and that's why we've got this sense of a Missio here, but that is leaving now. The other way this can work, of course, is, as I said, that you are saying goodbye to a potential romantic prospect that just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. And this has had kind of a detrimental effect on your self-esteem, particularly I think while Jupiter was retrograde. But of course, Jupiter's now moving forward, so that situation I feel is shifting. We can certainly see it here in your 7th house of relationships with Via. So interesting that 3 of the geomantic figures are all earth signs. Very interesting. And then we've got 1 water. So no fire so far. But let's just look at family. Earth again. How interesting. I just wanted to see if this was a child. So here in your 4th house of home, family, and roots, we've got Mercury in Virgo. So this is Conjunction, which is related to the earth element again. Now, Conjunction in many ways is about coming together with others. It is uniting the disparate parts within ourselves, or, if you've been having arguments or disagreements with relatives, for example, perhaps over like a child, maybe you felt that your relatives, like a parent or something, was being a little bit overbearing when it came to how you brought up a child, and so you're not on speaking terms, or things are a little bit they've been maybe a little bit difficult. Certainly, I think during that last set of lunar phases, things might have been tricky for you when it came to relatives. But I do feel as though you're going to kind of kiss and make up now. So that's good news. The less conflict we have in our lives, I think the better. And I also feel, given the quite volatile energies that we've got coming up over the next couple of months, that it's a good idea to to join forces with others in order to kind of get through potentially difficult times, or to share resources, because I do think that the world is in for a little bit of difficulties, particularly when it comes to economies and finances. So I think you're definitely better together with others than you are separate. I think that's how I'll kind of put that. But let's get into pulling some trinkets for you. So let's start with the full moon itself. So for Aries here in your 5th house, interesting, we've got, I'm almost inclined to say that this is more to do with your 11th house. So loss. The mice is all about loss. And as I said, I think this has to do with this transience that I've been talking about with the Missio. It can be about loss and separation of breakups, but equally it can be about a feeling of lack, or it can be about playing small. So maybe you're not really tooting your own horn within the social environment enough, or maybe you just feel inadequate compared to others, friends or professional associates, for example. It can also be about worry, but I think it's just reiterating this year that we've got here in your second and your 11th house. So it could be financial loss too. Right, one for the Aries moon. Yes, perfect. This is the coffin in the Lenormand system. So I think it's really just reiterating the idea here of Cauda Draconis, which is, as I say, the end of a cycle, the end of some kind of karmic contract, the end of a situation that maybe was designed to teach you some soul lessons. But that is now closing out, and you are being asked to close the door on whatever this is between now and the end of the waning moon cycle, which will happen between now and mid-October. Right, so one for Amicia in the second house. Okay, so here we've got the fox, and this suggests to me that you may feel as though you've been cheated out of some money, or that you feel deceived on some level. Now, this could be, as I say, related to whoever this person is. It might be that you feel that this person was dishonest with you if this was a love interest, for example. And so, this is pointing to you feeling maybe a little bit silly, or like you've been taken advantage of, that kind of thing. So one for Via. Interesting. The garden here. So the garden points to kind of the public aspect of relationships. Now, you could read that in one of several ways. You could read it as maybe you are, the way that you meet, or that you choose to meet a potential long-term partnership may change. So, for example, this could be about like dating apps or websites. Maybe you are changing platform. Tinder is not really the way to kind of meet someone long-term. Maybe you're thinking about a more exclusive dating app that's aimed more at sort of people who want relationships, for example. Equally, it could be about whoever you are leaving behind, having one face for privately and another public face. So maybe they're a little bit like narcissistic, or they wear a mask, for example. And this may be why we've got the garden here. But the good news is that you're shifting away from your things are shifting in a positive direction here. So have faith. And I think you will certainly see that mid-month when we get to the Jupiter sextile to Neptune. So that's going to be really, really magical. So look out for that. Right, one for conjuncture, please. Interesting. So definitely some kind of reunion, or being reunited with a family member. So somebody you've either been separated from physically, or you haven't been talking to. So that's lovely to see. A nice way to end the reading. As I was saying, it just is confirmation for me that Via is about relationships moving in a positive direction. So that's good news, Sag. Let's have some parting advice from the Universe Has Your Back Oracle. What parting? Whoops. Let's have 3. Why not? Oh, wow. So hope is the conduit for miracles. As I was saying, don't lose heart. Things are definitely on the up, and I think you'll feel that the sort of more that Jupiter picks up speed and keeps going direct, and particularly when it gets to that sextile with Neptune, which is, I think, about the 14th of October. Okay, the moment I realign with love, clear direction is presented to me. So I feel like this has to do with the 7th house, the movement when it comes to relationships. So really a kind of a moving away from any difficulties, or disappointments here, and moving towards much more positive dynamics with in terms of relationships. And then for your 5th house, perfect for the Aries sun, we've got there's nothing sexier than my authentic truth. So, I mean, another way we could read this garden is that maybe you put on a mask when it came to other people. Maybe you sort of thought you weren't good enough, and that's why we've got a missio here. So you kind of deceived somebody, and they sort of walked away as a result. That's another way that this energy could have worked, is that you weren't in your authentic truth. So I think the message here for you is very much, self-empowerment. It's that Aries, that diadem, fixed star, about wearing your crown, about coming into your power, and really just having the confidence to be who you are, whether it is with lovers or whether it is to do with friends and in the social dimension, the social domain. So wonderful reading, Sag. Wishing you all the best for this next 2-week period, and I'll see you again in a fortnight for the reading for the new moon.